to give us the information and help get Americans out, as well as to be our eyes and ears on the ground against terrorists. I mean, it really strains credulity. And look, if they were really helping us, they'd allow us to be operating in the theater on the ground. We'd have a list of all those Americans. There would be an orderly plan. The fact that that is not happening suggests that they are not necessarily living up to anything that they have so far promised.
Amy, what's your sense of the effort to get Americans and Afghan partners out?
Well, this is a situation that you're in when you leave the country. You no longer have control of the airspace, and you no longer have any ability to know who is and who isn't holding any of those valid, whether they're passports or other documents that would get you out of the country. So this is pretty much where we are situated right now. I think the other thing to remember is it's not just the Americans. There are somewhere around 100 Americans apparently who are still in country, who are trying to leave, but Afghans who are our allies, like the folks that you all have shown in the show previously, who we're going to hear stories about from now for a long time to come, who are desperate to get out, may have documents, but the Taliban will decide whether those documents are valid in their eyes or not.
But today, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said, don't call it a hostage crisis. Take a listen.
No, that is not what we would characterize it as. Those were points, those were comments made by a Republican congressman this weekend. So let me be very clear. We're in touch with American citizens. We're working to get them out. There are 4 who were able to depart over land. Our Secretary of State is in Qatar right now working on a range of options, including getting flights up and operational and going. And what we have seen is that individuals who have documentation are able to depart.
Jonah, your thoughts?
I think this is all nonsense. I think that, look, Jen Psaki, 2 weeks ago said we shouldn't refer to these people as stranded, and now she's saying we're moving heaven and earth to get these people out of there who want to leave. Well, does that mean they're stranded now? I mean, it sort of just goes to this larger problem that the administration seems to see this primarily as a messaging problem. That if they could just use the right words and prevent the media from using the wrong words, everything would be fine. When in reality, the problem that they have is they handed over a government of an entire nation state to a bunch of people who were behind the 9/11 attacks. Haqqani, the head of the Haqqani network, I think is the interior minister. The new supreme leader of Afghanistan is such a moderate that he allowed his own son to be a suicide bomber. The entire government is infested with pre-9/11 Taliban retreads and Al-Qaeda aligned people. And if it was possible to get Americans out if they just had the right paperwork and all these kinds of things, you wouldn't have things like digital Dunkirk. You wouldn't have these planes sitting there for hours on end. It's because, you're not supposed to use the word hostage, but that's, again, the problem they have is they don't like the words rather than the reality on the ground that makes those words applicable. And I don't know what else you're supposed to call these people that the government won't let leave unless certain accommodations are made, which sounds to me like cash, but we'll see.
Meanwhile, President Biden was in New York and New Jersey today talking up his Build Back Better agenda and climate change. Kimberly, is he going to be able to change the subject?
Well, he wants to desperately, and it's remarkable the speed with which they have changed gears, and now all of us just want all of us to focus completely on a domestic agenda. But as long as these stories continue to come out about Afghanistan and about the Americans who are not out against our allies who are not out, and again, Anthony Blinken said, well, the world is watching. The Taliban might behave itself for a while, but it's not going to be able to repress the stories of its ultimate brutality, which is built into its entire structure. So these headlines are going to continue coming out, and we'll see if Democrats can hold themselves together. But it's definitely a distraction that they did not want, and they've now got.
All right, panelists, you're off to a fast start. We have to leave it there for now. Up next, the dominance of the Delta variant in getting children back to schools.
America, we're in this together.
And if you can, get the vaccine.
For information on vaccine sites, visit the vaccine finder on the homepage of foxnews.com.
I do things that maybe a lot of people don't want to do. I mean, I'd be the first one to parachute out of the airplane, or I'd be the first one to go into rebel territory. I just like doing things that are different and adventurous, I guess is the best word I can think of.
Howard Buffett has led a varied life. He's done construction and worked for a candy company. He's been an agribusiness executive and is now a farmer. For 2 years, he was the sheriff of Macon County, Illinois.
Macon MC1, I have a 1038 eastbound I-72.
There's something else we should mention. He's one of billionaire Warren Buffett's 3 children, which means he gets a lot of money for his own foundation.
We get stock every year from my dad, so we get in somewhere around $185 million, today, and we try to give away what we bring in.
Do you have any idea total how much you've given away over the years?
About $1.4 billion.
Howard Buffett focuses on improving food and water quality in poor countries and helping resolve international conflicts, which takes him to interesting places.
About 2 years ago, I was in a helicopter in Congo and got hit by a PKM round, and I just love that stuff, And I keep coming home, so it's a false security. Well, there's that little knoll we drove out to there, Sheriff.
It's also taken him to survey farms his foundation owns on our southern border and get briefings from local sheriffs.
They're going to get the other criminal element to come over at Section B.
Buffett has written a book called Our 50-State Border Crisis, focusing on the flood of drugs from Mexico.
We are in a fight. If you had 70,000 U.S. citizens dying any other way, any other place, people would be, up in arms over it.
Buffett has definite ideas how to win the fight. He says our Border Patrol needs to act more like the military and less like a bureaucracy. And he says we need to do more to fight drug addiction.
All 3 of these buildings will be done in 2019.
He's giving more than $60 million for drug treatment in his new hometown of Decatur, Illinois.
What do you think of President Trump's border policy?
You can put a wall out in the middle of nowhere where people aren't crossing. It's not going to do any good. You can put a wall so far away from areas where Border Patrol agents are stationed that you can't apprehend anyone. So it's not a simple solution.
Back in 2006, Warren Buffett said he would give away 85% of his fortune. Howard agrees with his dad.
You give people things, they don't appreciate them, and they don't work hard for things. They don't earn things. There's such a thing as unearned entitlement.
There was a quote from your dad that I loved. He said, I want to give my kids enough so they can do anything. I don't want to give them so much that they can do nothing.
If I wanted to have my own airplane or my own yacht, I might not be able to afford to keep it up. But I don't want those things. So I am pretty happy with what I get to do in my life.
Hello to our fans watching in India. Thanks for watching Fox on Hotstar. If you have a question or comment about one of our shows, email us at foxaroundtheworld@foxnews.com.
The data are now in, and there's no benefit to a cloth mask in the formal studies. If masks do help, it ranks as number 5 or 6 in strategies after ventilation, adult vaccination, teen vaccination, and potting and distancing.
For the vast majority of our children, having an open school, having masks optional would be ideal.
In order to protect those who can't get vaccinated, there are certain simple things you have to do. Universal masking in the school. And even though there are some government leaders locally who are trying to push back on that, we've got to get the school system masked in addition to surrounding the children with vaccinated people.
So children are back to school. My kids are wearing masks full time. Your kids may be as well. And we are back with our panel, Kimberly, Amy, and Jonah. Amy, mask confusion, your thoughts?
Well, we're now finally seeing some polling on this, and it seems that the debate really is much more, or at least the divide is much more over vaccination than it is over masking, at least requiring vaccinations for things like schools or going back to work. That's Americans are somewhat evenly divided, with a little more favoring mandated vaccines. When it comes to masking, though, what we're seeing in the polling is that most parents are okay with the idea of their child or people who are working in the schools, teachers and otherwise, putting a mask on. I think the big challenge ahead of us, though, is, as we're starting to see, children who come down with COVID, who then have to be quarantined. It not only impacts the schools, but it impacts the parents, who then have their schedules once again up in the air, like we saw back in 2020, unable to potentially go back to work or to keep the schedule that they've been planning on.
Jonah, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think one way to think about this, the masking stuff at this point, I'm kind of exhausted by the topic, in the sense that I'm both anti-maskophilia and maskophobia. Where masks are appropriate, wear masks. Where masks aren't inappropriate, don't wear masks, and don't be a jerk to people who do things differently than you. But more broadly, there's a lot of data coming in. One of the points I try to make as a conservative about public policy is that complexity is a subsidy. the people with the resources that allow them to get around problems are going to get around problems. And we've now seen something like 1 million families have just pulled their kids out of school. There's millions of hours of lost learning that are going on here, and it's disproportionately affecting people who don't have access to high-speed internet, who really need schools to be able to go to their jobs. And it feels to me that it's worth keeping schools open, even if you have to amp up the mitigation on other fronts.
So the Delta variant seems to be the dominant variant in terms of patients across the country right now. There's now new concern about the Mu strain of the virus and trying to figure out how bad that will be. Take a listen to this.
That's the good news about our vaccines. If you get the level of antibody high enough, which boosters actually do, then you can feel pretty confident that you're going to be protected against virtually any variant.
We don't know exactly how contagious it is, and there are some early studies to suggest it may not respond quite as well to our vaccines. But that's early data, and we need much more information about that.
Kimberly, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, we just honestly don't know. And you can see right there, there's a dispute. There's going to have to be more studies done. Look, there's also an argument out there. We haven't really settled on the booster science yet. We have found out that some of the vaccine companies haven't even turned over the data to regulators. But I think what this all does highlight is that there's going to be many more strains coming. And I think society is going to have to figure out a way to adjust to that reality and move on in some of these debates, because this was never one and done. This is now a long-term reality.
Yeah, a lot of us thought when we were vaccinated it was story over, throw out the masks, and now we're talking bring back the masks and don't forget a booster anytime soon. And the dilemma continues. Panelists, thanks so much. When we come back, tomorrow's headlines tonight.
But the bottom line, you're either playing or you're not, and guys can go by you in a hurry. I thought Ryan Watts had some good and bad moments, just like Ryan Day said. But, man, when you get a game under your belt as a starter, Jim, you remember this. I mean, it is so much different the next time you go out there. And I'm just curious to see how they do play that little game at the cornerback position going into this week. I mean, you would think having Sevyn Banks and Cam Brand out there, which a lot of us projected as our top two corners, would be huge against Oregon. But, I can't deny that Denzel Burke grew up a little bit.
In your Newshawk days, do you recall Ohio State's courtship of Mike Bellotti when the head coaching position was open?
Yeah, I think one of his questions was, do you play Michigan every year or something like that? As a matter of fact, I got kicked out of NetJets. I went over there. I requested a meeting with him, and this big guy shows up and almost picks me up by my shoulder and escorted me out of NetJets when he was leaving town that day. But, I think they ended up with the right guy. I don't know what you guys think.
No, absolutely.
You did okay. No question about it. Tim May, Letterman Row, we always appreciate your time. Tim, we'll talk to you later in the week, okay?
Always a pleasure, friends.
Thanks, Tim.
All righty. Up next, hour number 2 of our Buckeye Roundtable show. We'll have our Encova Insurance Archie Griffin High School Player of the Week Award, our American Dairy Association Mideast's top high school performances, and our weekly whip around the state. You don't want to miss that. We'll hit the sidelines with Matt Andrews, and our Insiders Access tonight, Bill Landis of The Athletic. Look forward to that. Saturday, it's Ohio State and Oregon. Kick will be at 12 noon. We'll be on the air with the AEP Energy Buckeye pregame show beginning at 10:30 a.m. Stay tuned. Hour number 2 of Buckeye Roundtable show coming up next. This is the Ohio State Sports Network from Learfield.
Time now to look back at the top 40 sports moments that left a mark on Cleveland.
Rajay Davis hit one of the biggest home runs I will ever remember in my life.
2-2 and a swing and a ball hit hard down the left field line. It's a tie game. A home run for Rajay Davis.
The game had so many twists and turns, and people for decades we'll be talking about that game.
And the next pitch to Martinez, a swing and a slow chopper toward third. Here comes Bryant on to first, and the Cubs have won the World Series.
For us, pain. That's what I can't stand about sports sometimes.
It hurts because we care. They left nothing on the field.
Celebrating Cleveland's top sports moments and looking forward to those still ahead of us. 850 ESPN Cleveland and the ESPN app. The dynamic duo, now and for years to come.
He's in the corner to the 5, and he leaps for the pylon.
I would not mind, playing for the Browns for a long time.
Touchdown, Kareem Hunt.
I can't ask for anything better than where I'm at. Cleveland's where I want to be.
A stutter step and a cutback and a stiff arm 45. He's to the 50.
I would definitely love to be a tandem here with Nick for a long time. I was definitely keen up Kareem the whole game.
They push each other. They root for each other. It's a sight to be seen.
Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt run on 850 ESPN Cleveland. The Land is on demand with exclusives like this.
It's our friend Mike Florio. What are your expectations for Odell this year?
One of the keys for the Browns this year is to make sure that this notion that we have to get the ball to OBJ, we have to get him involved in the game plan, we have to do this, we have to do that. Hopefully he's just another guy who's out there, who's an option available to Baker Mayfield. It can't be about him. When you look at what they did last year without him, anything they get from him is a plus.
Get all the best Cleveland sports content at your fingertips. TheLandOnDemand.com.
Did you know you can take 850 ESPN Cleveland with you wherever you go? With the ESPN app, you can hear your favorite 850 ESPN Cleveland shows. Here's how. First, open the ESPN app. Next, go to the bottom right-hand corner and tap More. On the next page, tap Live Radio. Lastly, scroll down to regional stations and tap ESPN 850 Cleveland. And there you have it. You're in. You can now listen to 850 ESPN Cleveland anywhere you go.
The Land on Demand, Cleveland's best sports content all in one place. Rizzo is now on your schedule. Listen to every minute of The Really Big Show with Riz and Aaron without commercial breaks. Subscribe today at TheLandOnDemand.com.
You're listening to the home of the Browns, 850 ESPN Cleveland.
Nathan and Bo on Cleveland Browns Daily, weekdays 1 to 3, right here on ESPN 850 WKNR Cleveland. You never know what they will talk about next.
So one year I had the privilege of voting for the Heisman, and after my 1 year, they didn't invite me back.
Who did you vote for?
So this was the year Kent State was like balling.
Man, come on, man. Hold up.
Right there.
Hold up. You had a Heisman vote?
Yes.
And you voted for somebody from Kent State?
Dree Archer. I was like, this dude is balling.
Come on, man. You spent your Heisman vote on Dree Archer.
On Dree Archer. Much love.
And again, good player, and he was balling.
He put Kent State in a situation where they almost went to a major bowl. I thought that was Heisman worthy.
You were the only guy.
I just see it right now. Who the hell voted for Dree Archer?
They're like,
Cherry.
Rod Cherry? Oh, he'll never get another one. He'll never get another vote.
No, banned from it after that.
Smile in the Afternoon with Emmett and Gerard. Weekdays from 3 to 5 on 850 ESPN Cleveland. No one gets you closer to the Browns than Nathan and Bo on Cleveland Browns Daily.
I talked with a front office member of another AFC North team, and he asked, what I thought of the rookie camp, and I said, Owusu Cornwell is a stud. Like, you can just see the way he moves. And then I said, I got to talk to him. He goes, oh, yeah, that's a hard one. He goes, guys, he's one of the best players in the draft. Well, why is he there 15? Who cares? Duh, winning, not our problem.
Cleveland Browns Daily, weekdays 1 to 3 on the home of the Browns, 850 ESPN Cleveland. The Land is on demand with exclusives like this.
It's our friend Mike Florio. What are your expectations for Odell this year?
One of the keys for the Browns this year is to make sure that this notion that we have to get the ball to OBJ, we have to get him involved in the game plan, we have to do this, we have to do that. Hopefully he's just another guy who's out there, who's an option available to Baker Mayfield. It can't be about him. When you look at what they did last year without him, anything they get from him is a plus.
Get all the best Cleveland sports content at your fingertips. TheLandOnDemand.com.
This is 850 ESPN Cleveland, the home of the Browns.
Looks, throws, corner, touchdown, Jarvis Landry.
WKNR AM Cleveland.
Buckeye
presented. Requiring hospitalization. Rachel Cohen from
from member station Boise State Public Radio has more.
2 public health districts in North Idaho entered crisis standards of care Tuesday. That means healthcare resources such as ventilators, ICU beds, and staff will be triaged in an effort to save as many lives as possible. Here's Idaho Department of Health and Welfare Director Dave Jepson speaking during a media briefing Tuesday.
You go to the hospital, you should expect a longer wait time. You may not be seen in a traditional space. In fact, you may be seen in a classroom or a hallway.
Jepson says other regions of the state, including the Boise area, are dangerously close to crisis standards too. The state has one of the lowest vaccination rates in the country, with less than half of residents aged 12 or older fully vaccinated. For NPR News, I'm Rachel Cohen.
3 former NFL players have pleaded guilty to health care fraud. As NPR's Ryan Lucas explains, a total of 15 defendants have now pleaded in the case.
2 of the former players, ex-Washington running back Clinton Portis and ex-Kansas City wide receiver Tamarick Vanover, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit health care fraud. The 3rd defendant, former journeyman linebacker Robert McCune, was accused of orchestrating the scam. He pleaded guilty to wire fraud and health care fraud conspiracy and other offenses. The trio was among more than a dozen former NFL players indicted in connection with the scheme, under which some $2.5 million in false and fraudulent claims was paid out. Sentencing is scheduled for early next year. Ryan Lucas, NPR News, Washington.
That giant fire near Lake Tahoe in California now appears to be nearly 50% contained, and fire crews that have spent the past 3.5 weeks battling the wildfire are a bit more upbeat. Officials say that containment lines for the Calder fire appear to be holding. The Dow was down 269 points. This is NPR. In a huge move for the predominantly Catholic country, Mexico's Supreme Court has ruled unanimously that penalizing abortion is unconstitutional. KJZZ's Fronteras Desk in Hermosillo, Mexico, Kendall Blust has more.
Tiene la obligación de adoptar aquellas medidas.
Chief Justice Arturo Zaldívar said the ruling is consistent with the court's position for more than a decade that abortion is a fundamental right and that pregnant people must be guaranteed access to the procedure. The ruling came in response to a law in the northern state of Coahuila that punishes abortion at any stage of pregnancy with up to 3 years in prison. In Mexico, abortion is legal in 4 out of 32 states. While the ruling won't immediately make the procedure widely available across Mexico, it could lead to the release of those jailed for having an abortion. For NPR News, I'm Kendall Blust in Hermosillo, Mexico.
Computer chip maker Intel now says it plans to invest upwards of 80 billion euros, or just under 95 billion US dollars, boosting computer chip production in Europe over the next decade. The California-based company announcing today will open up its semiconductor plant in Ireland to automakers, and also will announce locations of 2 major European chip fabrication plants by year's end. Intel back in March said it planned to open up its chip factories for outsiders to use. Intel is currently the biggest maker of processor chips for PCs and data centers. Increasingly complex vehicles require computer chips, and the industry has been suffering through a shortage. Crude oil futures prices fell today. Oil down 94 cents a barrel to settle at $67.64 a barrel in New York. I'm Jack Spear, NPR News in Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, supporting those working towards a day when no one has to choose between paying rent, putting food on the table, and protecting their health and the health of others. rwjf.org.
Drug overdoses are an epidemic within the COVID-19 pandemic, and some experts say it's time for radical solutions, creating drug policy that actually helps the most vulnerable instead of criminalizing them. Plus, your take at 877-869-8253. I'm Melissa Harris Perry, and that's next time on The Takeaway, weekday afternoons at 3 on 93.9 FM.
This is Fresh Air. I'm Terry Gross. My guest, Joy Harjo, is the first Native American to be appointed Poet Laureate of the U.S., and she's only the second Poet Laureate to be appointed to a 3rd term, the term she's now serving. Her new memoir, Poet Warrior, is a personal story, including how she learned to find herself in the spiritual world. It's also the story of how her family connects to the history of Native people in America. She writes about her great-grandfather, who survived the Trail of Tears, the government-enforced relocation to what was designated as Indian Territory. That's how her family wound up in Oklahoma. Harjo is a member of the Muskogee Creek Nation and lives in Tulsa. In addition to her own collections of poems, she edited the books When the Light of the World Was Subdued, Our Songs Came Through, a Norton anthology of Native Nations poetry, and Living Nations, Living Words, an anthology of First Peoples poetry. At the age of 40, Harjo started playing saxophone. She plays and recites her poems on her new album, I Pray for My Enemies. Joy Harjo, welcome to Fresh Air.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I just want to start with a language question. I use the expression Native American. In your book, you say that you don't really like that expression, but I asked you about it beforehand, and you said you're kind of with it now. You're changing your mind. So tell us what words you like to use to describe your heritage and why you have that preference or those preferences.
Well, I grew up with the term Indians or American Indians, and of course that's problematic too. And Native American came out of the academic realm somewhere in the 80s, and for me, I've settled on just Native with the capital N, or sometimes I use Indigenous or even First Peoples.
But you said it was okay to use Native American. Explain why you're okay with that.
It's become ubiquitous, and even the younger people are using that term. Although among ourselves, we call each other by our tribal nations' names.
It sounds from your memoir like a real turning point for you as a person and as a poet was the Native empowerment movement of the 60s. What were the issues that you were fighting for then?
The 60s I equate a lot with, civil rights. It was a humanity alert that this country is huge. There's more of us and not everyone has equal rights. In the late 60s, I was at Indian boarding school in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Not your usual boarding school, but it was an arts school. And I remember hearing about Martin Luther King being killed, and all of that was on the news. And we were all young Native artists there from 8th grade to 2 years postgraduate. We'd stay up late nights talking and making art together and talking about what it meant to be a Native person and about history and about how our art was part of history making.
And did you become an activist?
Yes, I think I always was in some way. Is that I think what I've come to realize, and that what has motivated my art making is really a strong need for justice, for people to be treated, for everyone. And when I say people, I also mean animals and insects and the birds and the earth person that we're all part of, that there's a key element, and that's respect. And, when I became more actively involved as a student at the University of New Mexico, I was painting then and just starting to write poetry. And I remember thinking, if my work does nothing else, when I get to the end of my life, I want Native peoples to be seen as human beings.
Were there specific issues related to sovereignty or equal rights that you were...
WBEZ is supported by Governor State University, where prior college credits and work experience can add up towards a college degree. govst.edu/PLA.
To take care of, the quality of water, the quality of people's lives. And I remember at one point going out to do a story just after the Church Rock uranium spill, and there were children out playing in the water and the livestock, and the Navajo speakers were saying, we need a word. I mean, how do we come up with a word that will tell the people that even though you can't see it, there is something dangerous here that can harm you, and you can't use these waters. And it was the only source of water for their livestock.
I'd like you to read a poem that I think relates to what we're talking about. And it's in your new memoir, and it doesn't really have a title. It's just kind of integrated into the text. And the first line is, Poet Warrior reached for a gun.
Okay, here goes. Poet Warrior reached for a gun. She was given a paintbrush, a saxophone, a pen. These will be your instruments of power, the old one said. Though the gun gleamed and pranced as a tool of takeover by governments, even as it danced through the imaginations of revolutionaries as the perfect tool for social change. Do not be fooled, they told her. Violence might be louder, tougher, and is often good-looking. The power of insight and compassion is fiercely humble and helpful. Be ready for what the story of your age demands. You will be tested. There will be jealousy, envy, but the most difficult enemies will be from your closest circle, even your family. You must act in a manner that will cause no harm to anyone, 7 generations back or forward.
That's my guest, Joy Harjo, reading a poem from her new memoir, Poet Warrior. So you've been a tribal member of the Muskogee tribe since birth. What does it mean to, officially be a tribal member?
Well, yeah, that becomes a very hot political subject because there are federally recognized tribal groups and tribal nations in this country. There are tribal nations that are legitimate, that are not federally recognized. There are many fake tribal entities that are trying to claim tribal status for a number of reasons. So there's something certainly about belonging, and it's like any family. I think for me, let me just put it here, I belong to a family, and this is my family.
I want to ask you about your great-grandfather, Manawi. Am I pronouncing his name correctly?
Yeah, Manawi. He's 6 generations great-grandfather.
Oh, so he's like great.
Yeah, I have a great-grandfather, Henry Marcy Harjo, and then my 6th generation grandfather, Manawi, who fought against Andrew Jackson.
And you describe him as one of the beloved leaders of our people. You say he and his warriors stood up against Andrew Jackson and the U.S. government against the illegal move from our homelands. So would you describe the removal and the law that made it mandatory?
What I can say is that, he went against law. President Andrew Jackson went against Congress to remove southeastern Native peoples from the lands there into Indian Territory, or what became known as Oklahoma. Of course, we did not go willingly. There were several scuffles and fights and even massacres against this illegal removal, but we were force-marched from our homelands. And I think a lot of America thinks, they think there was only the Cherokee or the so-called 5 civilized tribes that included the Muskogee Creek, but these kind of removals or forced migrational marches happened all over the country. And we were moved because people wanted those lands. They were very rich, the Southeast, very rich in resources and water and animals and plants and so on. But we lost probably at least half of our peoples on that march due to hardship, freezing, violence, rape, all kinds of things that happened on those different removal marches. I think a lot of America, when they think back in history and see natives, we were hiding out in the woods, wearing rags and so on, but we had huge societies. I have a great uncle who had the largest horse racing establishment on the eastern seaboard, Muskogee Creek man, and half Irish. And they wanted that. They wanted what we had.
Let me reintroduce you here. If you're just joining us, my guest is Joy Harjo, America's Poet Laureate. Her new memoir is called Poet Warrior. We'll be right back after a short break. This is Fresh Air.
WBEZ is supported by the British International School of Chicago, South Loop, giving students the tools needed to thrive and make their mark on the world. Open house October 6th. BISChicagoSL.org.
WBEZ is supported by Neil Gerber Eisenberg, a global law firm helping family offices and high net worth individuals protect investments and plan for the future in these unprecedented times. The firm's COVID-19 Resource Center is at nge.com.
This is Fresh Air, and if you're just joining us, my guest is Joy Harjo, the first Native American to serve as Poet Laureate. She's now serving her third term. Her new memoir is called Poet Warrior. We talked a little bit about one of your great-great-great-great-grandfathers. Your great-grandfather, Henry Marcy Harjo, was somebody who's been very important in your life, even though I don't think you ever met him. I think he died before you were born. He ended up having oil money, and this is a really interesting story that also has to do with Native history. So, do you want to explain in the simplest terms how he ended up living on oil-rich land and getting a lot of money as a result?
Yeah, it's a story that happened to a lot of indigenous peoples who were force moved from their homelands. Is they would put people on lands they figured no one else wanted, and didn't consider that maybe even other people lived there, but they would put us on lands that no one else wanted, and then lo and behold somebody would discover uranium or oil or coal or gas. And so what happened after we were removed to Oklahoma and had settled in communities, because we had it wasn't really ownership, communal use of lands, then the Allotment Act, the Dawes Act was put into place, and so the U.S. government started dividing up the land, which meant enrolling people and dividing up the land and giving people parcels of land. Well, one of those parcels that belonged to my great-grandfather and my great-grandmother and the family was near Glenpool. I think it was in Kiefer, a little community called Kiefer, Oklahoma. And that was one of the largest oil fields in the country. I think it was the largest oil fields. It was so huge that there were Glenpool, the town is still there, Glenpool, was basically a lake of oil.
So did your great-grandfather keep the oil rights or sell it to an oil company? How did he make the money?
Well, they were, he had rights. They were getting pretty big checks, I take it. They went on trips. He had the first car in Okmulgee, Oklahoma. And so they did fairly well, but it's a story I've always wanted to research because it made me wonder how much natives were getting per barrel of oil versus non-native people. And just like the story that was told in Killers of the Flower Moon, a lot of tribal citizens were killed, or people would marry different citizens for the oil, and there were all kinds of shenanigans going on to steal, including killing off parents, becoming guardians of the surviving children, and getting into the riches that way. So there's a lot of stories. Well, he wound up, I don't know exactly what happened. I know my father would get oil royalties, and then when he passed, we got oil royalties, but by the time they came to, his share came down to 4 children. The oil boom and a lot of it was gone, so we would get really small checks. And then one day I got a letter from the oil company saying that our rights had been sold, and they produced a document that appeared that my father had sold off his mineral rights, but I'm not sure that really happened. I don't know. It's a story, so now we don't have them. And it's a story I've always wanted to investigate because I'm not sure that's my father's signature. I have a lot of questions about what happened and what happened to the other sheriffs.
By the time it happened, you could no longer ask your father.
Right.
Native tradition is an oral tradition, not a written tradition. How did you become absorbed in books and poems and language, and did you have people to share that love with?
I've been trying to think of the first time I encountered reading or books, because the only book we had in our house, I think, was the Bible. And I liked the pictures. Often there were pictures in those books, or at least the one we had. And when I went to first grade, when we started to learn how to read, I was so thrilled about what happened with symbols, and that suddenly it opened up a world to me. I could read. I read all of the books in the first grade classroom and was sent into the second grade. And it became like a hunger for me, but I like the sounds, of course. I like the sound that words make. I like the percussion, the percussive elements, and the images, and so on. Just like, I heard the same kind of thing I heard in my mother's song making. But the more I read and the more the ability grew, the deeper I could read, the more stories. And I could be transported in much the same way that I could be in that kind of visionary dream world when I was younger. And when we get to about 7, and I think this happens to a lot of us, we forsake those realms of knowing and understanding, and reading helped give that back.
Your mother wrote some songs, words and music?
Yes, she did. She wrote, when I was really young, she was still with my father. She was writing songs, and she was so in love with him. And they were ballads, and a lot of them were very sad, but they were so beautiful. And she was going in and recording demos. And the band leader, very famous band leader here, Ernie Fields, took one of her songs and arranged it into a orchestral piece. But she loved music, and she had an old Underwood typewriter that was the most intriguing thing in the house that we were supposed to stay away from, but it was, it could make words. And that all stopped when they divorced, but there was a moment when we were immersed in music in our home.
You write that you were hungry for ritual, I guess when you were growing up and became a young woman, and you kind of created an imaginary ritual for yourself. I think one of the problems that you had when you were going from that transition between adolescence and adulthood was that, in going through puberty, you felt like there was no one to protect you from being preyed on by men and young men. Your father and your stepfather were abusive men, so you weren't going to rely on them to protect you. They were part of the problem. Is that part of the reason why you tried to draw on the presence, the, I guess, spiritual presence of, like, your great-grandfathers?
Yes, I think that there is always, I don't believe that we come into this world alone. We have assistance. And we have assistance from, I guess, what people call the other side, but there's interaction that goes on. I've learned this, especially being an artist, a writer, a musician, that, there's resonances. You can call it resonances. But yes, I have always felt this, my great-grandfather, Henry Marcy Harjo, around me, exactly when I needed him, or his wisdom. And I think it's true for everyone. I have been at the births of several of my grandchildren, and someone always walks them in, so that when I was writing this memoir, and I had a dream towards the end of writing it, and in the dream I was carrying my 7th generation granddaughter into the world, and it's a ritual.
Because Rogers only won 3 games in that whole match, and she'd been on the streak. She put out Ash Barty in America, and had Anne Sestea in the first round, in the second round as well. So, and that's one of the things that kind of needs to flag up for Raducanu, which happened to her at Wimbledon as well. Yes, she's the real deal. She is absolutely superb, and she's taking her opportunities brilliantly. But at the US Open this year, she's been gifted a brilliant draw so far as well. We haven't seen her taking on the big top 10 players, but then that's because they're not there. Somebody else has knocked them out, and we see this when the draw kind of opens up. We see players that step up, and you see players that you think, oh, this is great, this is a tap-in for you, and they somehow lose confidence in themselves. Raducanu has just taken all her opportunities in the matches she's got. She's got a big one next against Elina Bencic in Switzerland, who has just come back from Japan, having won the Olympics title. But kind of the way that Raducanu's been playing, I wouldn't be surprised if she books her place in the semi-final. By all rights, she shouldn't. Although bookies have shortened the odds up to 7-1 for her winning a Grand Slam sometime soon. I don't think that's the US Open. But she's so relaxed. She's hitting the ball so well. If that carries on, there's no reason. And she's playing on the Arthur Ashe Stadium as well already. I don't see any problem when she takes on Belinda Bencic at 5 o'clock in the evening on Wednesday, UK time, that she really has no reason not to make it to the semi-final. Bencic is going to have to believe in herself big time and not have any jet lag coming back from Tokyo.
So Emma's got the momentum to keep going with that one. I suppose we better talk about some of the male players. Daniil Medvedev is through. He's through to the semi-finals then, the world number 2.
Yeah, we love Daniil Medvedev on this show, don't we? Do you remember that battle he had with Novak Djokovic? Rafa Nadal a couple of years ago at the US Open. It was a match that just kept going. He was 2 sets down and a breakdown in the 3rd set, but came back to make it a 5-set match. I like to think of him as an accountant because he looks like an accountant. He's kind of tall, he's got a very nice orderly haircut, and I kind of get the feeling that when he's sitting down, he's considering how he can do his next tax return. But he doesn't play tennis like that. He just hits the ball brilliantly well, and has had the smoothest route of all the men at this stage, I think, through. He did drop a set in his latest match against the brilliantly named Dutchman Botic van der Sloot.
I'm glad you said that, not me. Not me. I mean, that's a mouthful, that, isn't it? That's a multi-syllabic name.
We've got some cracking names on the circuit at the minute, but Medvedev is just looking in control, and where we were talking about that 5-set match against Nadal a couple of years ago, he's coming through in straight sets, so he's not putting out too much effort so far. If there is going to be a big match along the line, it's going to be well rested for him.
Whereas Djokovic did have to make some effort to get through. I mean, he made it through past Jensen Brooksby, but it was a bit of a tough match, that, I thought.
Yeah, and you wonder about Djokovic's mindset at the moment. That one was in 4 sets. They were kind of straightforward sets, there was no messing around with tie breaks at the end. I think that was 1-6, 6-3, 6-2, 6-2, so he dropped that first set quite significantly. And, how is Djokovic at the moment? He's looking for this this calendar slam, having won all of the majors so far this season, but really not slipped up, that's not fair to him, denied the chance for Golden Slam, should we pop it that way, by his performance at the Olympic Games, where he kind of had the feeling that he was going to win it, and when he didn't, it was a bit of a slap in the face. Yeah. So and then pulled out of the mixed doubles bronze medal match, so denying his partner the chance to actually come away with an Olympic Games medal, and that was kind of popped back of losing the men's doubles as well. So, it was a bad few days for Djokovic then, and we did see his temper come out as well. I'm wondering, he must be looking at Matteo Berrettini and thinking, oh, I should be all right there. But also, back of his mind thinking, or will I be? Because Berrettini can, again, dig deep and find shots that he needs at the right time. But Djokovic, I think, I'm just interested when his attitude's at for when we see him play. He's going to be playing the very last match on Wednesday, basically. He's going to be the midnight session.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So that's Djokovic, and finally, let's talk Jamie Murray, the doubles quarterfinals, him and Joe Salisbury. I think that's his 7th successive US Open quarterfinal. Some achievement for Jamie.
Yeah, it is. Unfortunately for him, I think he's trying to raise the profile of men's doubles. And anyone who sits and watches men's doubles appreciates how fast it is, the skill, the different types of legs you need to play that kind of tennis. And you kind of feel that he's always overshadowed by his brother's achievements on the singles court. But, Jamie's been there, he's a multiple Grand Slam champion in the doubles. And Joe Salisbury as well, again, with his partnership with Raju Brown, has, seen him, dominate the men's rankings for quite some time now as well. So the men last year, I'm not so onto the rankings for the men's doubles as I was last year, but last year we had something like 7 British men in the top 15 ranked doubles players in the world, which was a formidable strength of players. And some of those were playing together at the time. Some of them were obviously in different partnerships with people from other countries, but it's a very, very satisfying statistic to see the British men doing so well at the doubles, because it's a quality game. It really is. And there's fewer matches, so to be up in the elite, or to get up into the elite and stay in the top elite, takes more work, because you've got to be winning those matches to keep maintaining your points.
Brilliant stuff as ever, Lisa. We'll keep in touch. Lisa O'Sullivan there, Talk Sports tennis correspondent, talking to me, Paul Ross, New Guys on Talk Sports and Talk Radio. We'll be live till 5.
Get set to kick off another big weekend of football with all the insight you need, thanks to the Friday Night Predictor League on TalkSport with Coral. Listen to Game Day Countdown every Friday night as the TalkSport team are joined by a Coral expert to attempt to predict the big weekend winners. The Friday Night Predictor League, every Friday night from 7 on TalkSport with Coral. Play Coral's Football Super Series game for free. Predict match stats on this week's big game and you can win a share of the monthly £25,000 jackpot. 18 plus, BeGambleAware.org.
When you're sorting your next van, you've got to get it spot on.
That's why I go to Vans Direct.
They source the perfect new van for you from the top manufacturers with the right payload, spec, and great finance options.
Like this new Citroen Dispatch, in stock now for £250 a month.
Delivered fast for free. So now my building business has gone next level.
My electricians is buzzing.
And my pest control company is killing it. The right van.
And the right deal.
For everyone. Vans. Vans Direct, the home of new vans.
See vansdirect.co.uk. Business users only. Free delivery mainland UK. 10,000 miles per annum. Initial rental 2250. Prices exclude VAT at 20%.
It was a crisp, cool morning. The sun was slowly creeping over the horizon, and there were moon pigs. Thousands of moon pigs. This little moon pig was off to surprise Deborah. This little moon pig was made in seconds, filled with love. Oh. And this mischievous little moon pig made Dad go ha 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 all day long. For when it comes to birthdays, it must be a moonpig.com. Download the app now.
Somewhere out there is a what to wear to work dilemma. A helping hand with a photocopier that's misbehaving. A seat on the rush hour bus. A colleague who's also a mate, an extra shift, a payday treat, and a well-earned Saturday off. You could find all this in a job that you never knew was out there. Search Job Help, the government website that can help you discover support, training and advice in finding your next opportunity. Job Help. We'll help you find it.
It's time for BT's end of summer deal. Get super fast fibre with guaranteed speeds or £20 back, super strong Wi-Fi, and more online security than any other big provider. All for the new lower price of $25.99 a month until the 16th of September. For feel-good fibre at a feel-good price. Why choose anyone else? Join BT today. New customers, CPI plus 3.9% increase each March. $33.99 a month from March 25. £20 reward card issued by GVS Prepaid Limited if we can't fix your speed in 30 days. Verify with superfast.fibre at bt.com. Terms apply.
Hawksby and Jacobs this afternoon from 1 on TalkSport with Green King Pubs. Enjoy a long lunch with radio's favourite landlords, featuring essential live sports talk and laughs on draft. It's the ultimate daily destination for sports fans. Hawksby and Jacobs on TalkSport with Green King Pubs. Search Green King Sports Pubs to book your table for big games, big deals and great times. If you can't be there, be here. Green King, your home of pub sports. 18 plus, drink aware.
Fishing around for a great day out? Dive into Sea Life with 2 free tickets worth up to £60 when you collect codes inside the Sun. With 10 UK locations to choose from, you're sure to make a big splash. Start collecting for your free tickets. Pick up the Sun today. It's sensational. T's and C's apply.
Across the UK, overnights with Paul Ross.
Now, friends, our next guest on TalkSport and Talk Radio has led a bit of a life. Gareth Timmins is a former Royal Marines commando who spent time in Afghanistan, Iraq and Somalia. He's also a security expert who has a degree in forensic psychology, and he's sharing his life lessons in a new book, Becoming the 0.1%. Only, I'll be honest, they're pretty tough, very honest life lessons, because his book drills down into his time training as a Royal Marine. It's the diary of a Royal Marines commando recruit. It's a brilliant read, and I'm delighted to say the author of Becoming the 0.1%, Gareth Timmins, joins us now. Good morning, Gareth. How you doing, matey?
Hey, Paul. How you doing? Thank you for having me on, mate.
It's a great pleasure. I tell you what, I really enjoyed this book because you can work on it on 2 or 3 levels. You can read it as a self-help book because the subtitle is How to Build an Elite Mindset. But it's also a very frank diary of your time years ago now training to be a Royal Marine. How did you come to be actually keeping a diary with everything else that was going on in your life at that time?
Sure, mate. So just before getting on the train to go down to Commando Training Centre Royal Marines, my mum gave me a diary just as the train doors closed. And it was quite an unbelievable gift, really, Paul. I wasn't academic at that point whatsoever. I'd done terrible at school because I thought I was playing rugby, going to turn pro. But I took the diary reluctantly, and I opened it on the train journey down and just did the first entry. And from that moment on, I just felt completely compelled to keep it, and that's what I did for a year, every single day until training was complete.
And it's very tough reading at times indeed, because you go, I mean, they put you guys through the absolute mill. I mean, the title, folks, Becoming the 0.1%, comes from the fact that I think only 1 in 1,000 applications to join the Royal Marines Commando actually make it through, don't they, Gareth? I mean, it's an incredibly tough procedure.
Sure, absolutely. It was an actual statistic, and it was highlighted on that infamous advert, which was where'd you quit? Here, here and here,
yeah.
where the young lad's going under the water tunnel and gets stuck. And it was just a fascinating and intriguing kind of endeavour, really, and one that really kind of whetted my appetite. And I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to go in and just see how far I can get. But there's so many people that drop out of it. I mean, even after so many people dropping out, once we started training, there were 51 of us that were, for all intents and purposes, possessed the aptitude to become a Royal Marine. And how many dropped out? I think there were about 40 that dropped out. So there were only 11 of us that passed out at the end.
And some of the things you go through make quite harrowing reading. Tell us about the sandbag run that you get in. I mean, this guy, your instructor, for all kinds of reasons, I'm sure, that were in his mind justified to toughen you up, is picking on you, saying your magazine pouches aren't closed. What's going on there? Tell us how the sandbag run works.
Sure. So we were on the ranges, and it's a test X where you have to. It's a pass or fail where you're firing at all different ranges. And one of the main things is that your magazine pouches are always done so that should you have to move, you've always got ammunition with you and it doesn't fall out. But some of the corporals were undoing the magazine pouches and telling you that they were undone. And what they made you do is, as a punishment, was you had to run, I think it was a mile or a mile and a half down from where the ranges were, the shooting ranges, down to the beach with an empty sandbag, fill it up with sand and then get it wet and then put it on your shoulder and run back a mile and a half. And you had 30 minutes, mate, to do this in. And it was running at full tilt. It was just about possible, but I mean, if some of the lads came back in 2 or 3, 5 seconds over the 30 minutes and had to go again, it was just, everybody was scared to death of it, and lo and behold, I got it.
Well, what I love about the book as well is that you're absolutely honest with yourself, because you're talking to a diary, so God bless your mum for giving it to you. I mean, I'm reading the entry, day 131, it's a long old process, Monday the 17th of October, and this is back in 2005, so 16 years ago. And you write, I've never felt as down or as bleep about things as I've done this morning. Really can't be bothered. I have zero motivation. What kept you going, do you think, Gareth?
I think 2 things really was, well, the main...
WBEZ is supported by the Ancona School, where students learn to be engaged citizens of the world through social justice, critical thinking, creative problem solving, and a lifelong love of learning. Learn more at anconaschool.org.
Sellers Market with literary programs, September 11th and 12th on South Dearborn Street. Details at printersrowlitfest.org. WBEZ is supported by the DuSable Museum of African American History, presenting its weekly Do Jazz series every Wednesday at 6 p.m., now through the end of September on the Roundhouse Plaza, rain or shine.
Support. Everybody's ready?
I'm so excited.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Grand Canyon.
What?
The games, the brands we recognize playing against each other. I think you do maybe wish that the teams kind of knew a little more about themselves when they get on the field together. Some of the football is not the cleanest in the world because it is week one and there's no preseason for these teams, but I'm never going to complain when we see Georgia, play a Clemson or a Notre Dame play a Florida State or an Ohio State play an Oregon like we're going to see this week.
Bill, you saw a lot of Ohio State defensive players run in and out. A lot of massive changes. I think that's more first week, and obviously what Minnesota was doing with their offensive line, depth that they had there. But do you think they'll settle down at the linebacker position with 2 or 3 guys, or we'll continue to see multiple guys in and out?
That's a good question. I think maybe we could have another week or two of them playing a deeper bench, so to speak, because like I said, they're still trying to figure out who they have. I thought based on the way guys played last week that Taraja Mitchell and Cody Simon maybe earned some more reps than the rest of the guys at that position, but when you have depth, I suppose you want to play it. I do believe at a certain point they have to narrow that down, and it's not going to be, I don't think, as kind of a physical, heavy run game as last week's, where we can let them work some more bodies in there. So I think you could start to see them begin to pare that down this week, but I think we're probably still maybe 2 or 3 games away from them really kind of zeroing in on 11 to 15 guys that they really like.
You've seen a lot of games at Ohio Stadium. Is there a great curiosity of what this is going to be like this coming Saturday, given the fact that it wasn't there last year, Bill?
Yes. I missed the fans in a major way last year, as I'm sure you guys did too. And it was great to see a packed house in Minneapolis and that environment, and the fans stick around for the entire game too. I thought was great. So I'm very excited to see people back in the shoe. I know there's still 10,000 tickets. I hope they fill that up on Saturday afternoon, because I missed a good college football environment in Columbus, and I'm really happy we're going to get one this weekend.
Bill, did you stop and see that you were in Madison on Saturday?
Yeah, we made some last-minute adjustments to our travel plans and ditched the flight and drove to Madison from Minneapolis and checked out the Penn State-Wisconsin game.
What was that atmosphere like? I mean, you talk about just some place that's always so packed and jacked up anyways, have to build up for 2 years or whatever. I mean, what was Madison like?
It was awesome. I had not been to a game sort of just in a fan capacity, just sitting in the stands watching it in probably 10 or so years. They pack you in there pretty good, and I'm a bigger guy. It's a little bit like a sardine can sitting in those seats, so I wasn't the most comfortable person in the world, but it was a very cool environment, and it was great to kind of be there when they started jumping around at Camp Randall again.
I'm a little guy, and it's not so comfortable in there either.
Yeah, not for me either, Bill. When in Wisconsin, did you get some spotted cow?
I did get some spotted cow.
All right.
While I was there, and I might have bought a few cases home with me, too.
All right, perfect. Bootlegged.
Awesome. Bill Landis, The Athletic, we always appreciate your time. We love your work, okay?
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. And Buckeye Roundtable brought to you in part by Encova Insurance, a proud sponsor of Ohio State Athletics. We will wrap things up with some chalk talk next as the Buckeye Roundtable show continues.
For a Buckeye Roundtable coming up, presented by Byers Auto on the Ohio State Sports Network from Learfield.
Hi, this is Paul Keels. This Buckeye season, don't let a broken windshield ruin your game plan. Safelite Auto Glass makes it easy to get your windshield fixed with their mobile glass shops all over Central Ohio. They can come to you anywhere, giving Buckeye fans more time for game time. OH? Man, I love that. Schedule at safelite.com. Safelite Auto Glass is a proud sponsor of Ohio State Athletics.
Safelite repair, Safelite replace.
Ohio State 4-miler fans, the 2021 Ohio State Brutus Bolt Race, presented by Raising Cane's and Byers Auto, is back. Join us on October 24th at Ohio Stadium. For more information on how to sign your kids up for the 2021 Ohio State 4-miler Brutus Bolt Race, visit ohiostatefourmiler.com. A portion of the 4-miler proceeds will go to the Buckeye Cruise for Cancer, benefiting the Urban and Shelley Meyer Fund for Cancer Research at the James.
Denzel Ward here for Union Home Mortgage, the official home lending sponsor of Ohio State Athletics. Achieving your dreams takes commitment, hard work, and perseverance. Union Home Mortgage helps you turn the dream house you've always imagined into a reality. If put you first with world-class service, personalized tools, financing, and unwavering support. Get started today at UHM.com. Union Home Mortgage. Promises kept.
Union Home Mortgage Corp. is an equal housing opportunity lender. NMLS 2229, equal 241, now Circle West, Ohio 446.
Before kickoff, hit the field with Game Time with Ryan Day.
At the 30, down the sideline and into the end zone for 6.
Join the head coach and experts from across Buckeye Nation to preview every matchup and breakdown for each week's game. Plus, don't miss exclusive in-depth interviews with Ohio State players and coaches. Get ready for another week of hard-hitting Buckeye football with Game Time with Ryan Day. Game day Saturday mornings at 9 in Columbus on 10 TV and statewide on Bally Sports Ohio.
It's caught. Touchdown, Ohio State.
Now you can hear 850 ESPN Cleveland on the ESPN app.
The ESPN app? I have that. Let's find 850 ESPN Cleveland. I can't find it.
Hey, honey, let me help. First, you open the ESPN app.
I know that.
Then there's a More button at the bottom right corner. Tap that.
Got it. Then what?
Click on Live Radio, then scroll down to regional stations.
I clicked on audio and I can't find it.
Well, if you were listening, I said Live Radio, not Audio Home.
Oh, let me try Live Radio. Then what again?
Now, honey, listen closely. Scroll down to regional stations and tap ESPN 850 Cleveland.
It works. Thank you, honey.
Not a problem, sweetie.
I have no idea how he'd make it through the day without her. But at least now he can listen to ESPN Cleveland on his smartphone using the ESPN app.
No one gets you closer to the Browns than Nathan and Bo on Cleveland Browns Daily.
I talked with a front office member of another AFC North team, and he asked, what I thought of the rookie camp, and I said, Owusu Cornwell is a stud. Like, you can just see the way he moves. And then I said, I got to talk to him. He goes, oh, yeah, that's a hard one. He goes, guy's one of the best players in the draft. Well, why was he there 15? Who cares? Duh. Winning, not our problem.
Cleveland Browns Daily, weekdays 1 to 3 on the home of the Browns, 850 ESPN Cleveland. You are listening to the Ohio State Buckeyes, 850 ESPN Cleveland.
This is the Ohio State Sports Network from Learfield.
Welcome back, everyone. Buckeye Roundtable presented by Byers Auto with Jim Lachey and Paul Keels. I'm Skip Mossick. Byers Auto Group has been serving Central Ohio and the surrounding areas since 1897. Their relationship doesn't stop when you buy a car, it starts. So come see why it's better to buy at Byers, proud sponsor of Ohio State Athletics.
Buckeye Roundtable, Chalk Talk.
Wrap things up with some Chalk Talk tonight. Let's begin with our Papa John's delivery of the game presented by Papa John's. Big one with Oregon. Who must deliver for the Buckeyes?
I think it starts with that defense. That defense is going to have to, play 4 quarters of football. I thought they played a great second half. Now they got to go out there and play a great first half to slow down Anthony Brown and that Oregon Duck offense.
Well,
I agree. The defense needs to take that step forward. We saw that the offense in the second half provided the explosiveness that everybody had hoped for.
Oregon, we mentioned this. They had a tight one against Fresno State Saturday. Vanilla, Fresno pretty good, or just a slow opener?
I think Fresno, their quarterback made some plays. The receivers were able to get open in the sidelines. They kind of sat down in a few areas and were able to get it done. And again, Oregon benefited from 4 turnovers by Fresno State. They got after a quarterback, but still Fresno State was able to hang in there and hang in that game. So I would credit Fresno State. Maybe Oregon, after losing Thibodeau in that ball game, they defensively didn't quite seem the same. Their offense found enough to, was able to score enough points to win it. But still, to give it up 24, you kind of worry about that.
Ohio State looks to be so explosive on offense, almost like they can strike at any time. Is there enough touches to keep everybody happy? I know it's early in the season, but if they keep going like this, guys might only get 5 or 6 touches a game.
Especially with the wealth of running back talent that we seem to have witnessed from game 1. The wide receivers, don't forget about the tight end, and also whatever C.J. Stroud might be able to give them. Ryan Day was asked today during his press conference when he talked about so few offensive plays. Well, on one of those long plays, would he want Olave or Wilson to just go down rather than go all the way? Says, we'll let him go all the way.
It's just a big problem. We score too fast, guys. We'd like to get more plays. These one-play drives are killing us. We don't like it. We want to get to 10, 12 plays. Now, you love that short play drives, and Ohio State was able to do that, have some big plays in the second half. And I thought that's one thing you wanted to see is we had some big play capability last year, and certainly when you got Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, you're going to have it again, and it was demonstrated in the second half.
Ohio State is a big game coming up tonight. And it is. It's a big game. Ohio State, though, has struggled in recent years with home-ranked non-conference opponents. I'm talking recent years, like the last 20. 17 against Oklahoma. Tech was unranked. 09 USC, they were third. 05 Texas, they were ranked number 2. NC State in 03 was number 24. They won that game, but still ranked number 24. But the last time I could find top 10 was Washington State in 02. They were ranked number 10 as far as a victory with all of that. But I guess my question is there anything to that? Is it just really, obviously, you're talking about top 10
a lot of
teams.
different coaches through that time and squads.
And programs that have been successful
really
too.
Good.
You're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, certainly Virginia Tech was, Frank Beamer was still Beamer ball, and Bud Foster was still coach on that defensive side. They put something together, had a game plan that was very effective that night. It did help them all throughout the year.
But Ohio State won the return games.
I know, that's what was so bizarre.
They took care of them. Oklahoma, same thing. That's when Noah Brown had an unbelievable catch.
You won in Austin, lost here. I mean, the same sort of thing. Oklahoma lost both to USC.
We need our crowd noise to be a little bit more effective, I guess, because we're doing it on the road.
Speaking of that, welcome fans back. Lots of new protocols with the noon kick. Allow plenty of extra time to get in.
A lot of that because of some of the construction that's going around campus. But, the whole thing, download the app because tickets are all mobile as well as parking passes that people need to get. The tickets are always important. Also, there's going to be metal detectors you go through that you don't have to empty your pockets. Be mindful of that. But the mask, you do not have to wear a mask when you were in the stands outside within the stadium. But
if you've been vaccinated.
You will need them in the restrooms and in enclosed areas.
Masks are a pain. I get it. It is what it is. We are where we are. Be respectful of one another. Follow the rules and just get out there and have a good time.
And show up early. Show up early. That's one thing I can tell you from my stadium experience last week at watching the Hawkeyes. You better have your ticket downloaded into your wallet and your parking pass because don't count on Wi-Fi around the stadium to be working. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't.
I know we did the home games last year in person, but you guys excited to be, broadcasting in front of
I'm excited to see the band, Skip.
See the band, all of that. Absolutely. And to see the fans roaming around the stadium both before and after the games.
It's to be a lot of fun. NFL will start later this week. Buckeyes and the NFL will return next week. And I tell you what, a lot of guys to keep an eye on, Jim.
Well, just right here in Ohio for the Bengals, Eli Apple, Von Bell, Drew Chrisman's there on the practice squad.
He just got released today.
Did he?
Yeah.
Okay, he was. This wasn't updated yet. Sam Hubbard signed a big deal in the offseason. Isaiah Prince is still over there. Billy Price, he just went over to Giants, so he was in a trade. You look at Carolina, they got Michael Jordan and Pat Elflein, two guys on their offensive line. Curtis Samuel was there. Now he's with the Washington football team with McLaurin. They're all over. The Cowboys have a few. For the Browns, Denzel Ward, Tommy Togiai over there. So, they're all across the league, and it's going to be fun to watch them throughout.
I tell you what, it's hard to believe. It seems like the NFL should have started by now. But
Labor Day,
it's kind of there. And I didn't miss not having that extra preseason game. I don't know about you.
I don't think any of the players missed that.
As somebody who did preseason games for a long time, that fourth one was difficult to do.
You didn't play it anyways. That's what I'm saying.
That's what made it difficult.
I know, talking to my son-in-law, Pat, they had the weekend off, so he really enjoyed just having some rest time and not doing anything.
That is fantastic. So look forward to that. Again, Ohio State and Oregon coming up Saturday. Games at noon. We referenced this last week, Jim, but how tough is it for a West Coast team coming east and playing at noon?
Yeah, what I talked about, too, is I said typically they leave on a Thursday, and that's what Oregon's going to do. They're going to get here Thursday evening, get a night in, have a normal Friday practice, whatever they type do. Of course, it won't be normal because they won't be, at their facility, so to speak. Get a chance to go in Ohio Stadium, get acclimated to the time, and then go to bed early and get up early and start it all again.
Sometimes it's hard for the home team to get acclimated to playing.
Exactly.
We've seen that before.
We love it, but
we do.
It's going to be a great day of football Saturday. Looking forward to it.
It should be a lot of fun. Guys, great job. Tonight, the hours just flew by.
Sure, Daddy. Once again, we'll see you Thursday.
You got it, absolutely. Thursday for Coach Day's radio show. Buckeye Roundtable, presented by Byers Auto, has been brought to you statewide by Encova Insurance, the American Dairy Association Mideast, Papa John's, and by Byers Auto. For our producer tonight, Colin Behringer, and for Jim Lachey and Paul Keels, I'm Skip Mossick. As always, thank you for listening. This is the Ohio State Sports Network from Learfield.
Tomorrow on Fresh Air, we'll remember actor Michael K. Williams. We'll listen back to 2 interviews with him. He co-starred in The Wire, Boardwalk Empire, The Night Of, and When They See Us, he's nominated for an Emmy for his performance in Lovecraft Country. I hope you'll join us.
Reduced by 20% without any impact to wages. Party hopes the move will increase worker happiness and boost productivity. Spain, Japan, New Zealand, and Iceland have previously adopted a similar method. Well, for more stories, log on to foxbusiness.com. In New York, I'm Cheryl Pisoni.
All right, it's only 7 days left until the California recall election. Polls show that voters in the state have a very real chance to oust their sitting governor, Gavin Newsom. It's not hard to see why Newsom's nervous about that possibility. At a rally with Elizabeth Warren on Sunday, Newsom admitted that he's not very good at his job. In fact, according to Gavin Newsom, literally anyone who identifies as a woman would be a better governor than he is.
Women are smarter in politics, smarter in civics. They're smarter in economics. Women rule. Man.
Caitlyn Jenner, that could be a big boost. Gavin Newsom is continuing to make the case for his own removal from office. In 7 days, we'll see if voters still believe in him. Well, that's about it for us tonight. And of course, tune in each and every night at 8 o'clock to that show that is the sworn enemy of lying, pomposity, smugness, and groupthink. Also, don't forget to DVR the show if you have not done that already. Also have some good news. The President and the Freedom Fighters, my latest book, it's coming out the first week in November, and I have some stage shows revolving around it. It's going to be in the following cities: in Charleston, West Virginia, November 7th, that's Sunday; in Ponte Vedra, December 3rd; Orlando, Florida, November 21st; in Clearwater, Florida, December 4th. So go to briankilmeade.com for tickets. It's going to be our personal winning the war on history, the President Freedom Fighter. You can pre-order it now. And don't forget to watch the radio show. It's on Fox Nation. You can hear it all around the country, briankilmeadshow.com. Jennifer Griffin and Congressman Mark Wayne Moen will be amongst our guests, and General Petraeus. Have a great evening, but first I'd like to see what Sean Hannity looks like.
The very latest headlines, along with in-depth analysis and conversation, depend on Fox News Radio and FoxNewsPodcasts.com.
Expressing concern. I'm Lisa Lacera, Fox News. The State Department out with a statement after the Taliban announced its new caretaker government with worries about the track records of some of the men chosen. At least 2 have known terrorist ties, and one is the leader of a group that may be holding at least 1 American hostage since January 2020. As the Secretary of State is in Qatar as the U.S. tries to get more Americans out of Afghanistan.
Antony Blinken is warning the Taliban against blocking Americans from leaving Afghanistan.
We're holding the Taliban to the commitments that they've made to ensure the free passage and safe travel.
Speaking in Qatar, which helped the U.S. evacuate tens of thousands of people last month, the Secretary of State said the Taliban has given assurances that people will be allowed to leave.
We believe the number of those who have American citizenship, many of them dual nationals, who remain in Afghanistan, is somewhere around 100.
He said the U.S. is talking with the Taliban about arranging further departures. In London, Simon Owen, Fox News.
A pre-trial hearing today at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba for reported 9/11 mastermind Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and 4 suspected co-conspirators after more than a year delay due to the pandemic. The court hearing paused 2 hours after it began over a procedural issue. Court is expected to be back in session tomorrow. President Biden spent part of today touring areas of New York and New Jersey impacted by the heavy rain last week left over from Hurricane Ida.
My thoughts are with all those families affected by the storm.
The president assured residents federal help is on the way. At least 50 people in 5 states were killed, many drowned in floodwaters. Vermont State Police say 3 troopers who were accused of being involved in a scheme to create fake COVID vaccination cards have resigned. Troopers Sean Summers and Raymond Witkowski stepped down last month, while Trooper David Findle resigned last week. America is listening to Fox News.
Jason in the House, the Jason Chaffetz podcast. There is always someone doing something stupid somewhere. Dive deeper than the headlines and the party lines as I take on American life, politics, and entertainment. Join me, Jason Chaffetz, every Wednesday as I shed light on the news and make some predictions along the way. You never know who will drop in. Subscribe now on FoxNewsPodcast.com or wherever you download podcasts.
Connect to Fox News Audio on the Fox News app. Listen to hear your favorite hosts like Brian Kilmeade, Jimmy Fallon, and Guy Benson standing up for what's right, live and via podcast. Just click listen, then swipe right and hear the latest news updates on your time. And scroll down to hear the latest podcasts from Fox News. And it's even easier to listen in the car with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Get programming alerts and notifications. Fox News Audio is on the Fox News app. The voices America trusts. Download it now.
The CDC is warning against travel to Sri Lanka, Jamaica, and Brunei due to the rising number of COVID cases in those countries. People in northern Idaho are warned that a surge in COVID cases there may mean rationing care at some hospitals.
A last resort called Crisis Standards of Care is activated by the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare. It means that resources like equipment and intensive care unit beds may go first to patients most likely to survive. Other patients may be cared for in classrooms or conference rooms. Like a lot of other states, Idaho has been going through a surge in COVID-19 cases. It's got one of the lowest vaccination rates in the country as well, and there's been a struggle to keep some hospitals fully staffed. Chris Foster, Fox News.
In Texas, a COVID surge closing down some schools.
A large number of reported COVID cases among students and staff has the Burnett, Texas School District shutting down all campuses today and tomorrow for deep cleaning. It comes as hospitals throughout Texas also report shortages of ICU beds.
This whole surge, candidly, is two things. It's primarily the Delta variant, and the Delta variant is going after, for the most part, the unvaccinated.
Stephen Love, president of the DFW Hospital Council. This is the Wall Street Journal, also reports at least 1,000 schools in 31 states have closed down since classes began due to COVID cases. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
A coalition of environmental groups is calling for this year's climate summit in Glasgow to be postponed, arguing that too little has been done to ensure the safety of participants amid the continuing threat from COVID-19. The coalition, the Climate Action Network, includes more than 1,500 organizations in 130 countries. It says there is a risk to many government delegates, civil society campaigners, and journalists from developing countries may be unable to attend because of travel restrictions. The UN Climate Conference is scheduled for early November. I'm Lisa Lacera, and this is Fox News.
And thank you. By the way, no excuses because you work tonight, being late tomorrow, and I'll be watching at 6 a.m., all right?
Thank you, sir.
So, all right. Welcome to Hannity. Tonight, Americans abandoned. They're held hostage behind enemy lines in the new Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. More appropriate name, hell on earth. Planes stopped on the tarmac, up to 1,000 U.S. of our fellow citizens in hiding. Thousands more U.S. visa holders, they're left behind. All our Afghan allies, tens of thousands, they're left behind. Each and every one abandoned by Joe Biden. God help them all, as Joe Biden now has turned his back on every single one of them in what is officially one of the absolute worst foreign policy debacles, sadly, in U.S. history. At this hour, terrorists from the Taliban, ISIS, ISIS-K, Al-Qaeda, they're now hunting anyone and everyone with ties to this country, the United States of America. But after a nice long weekend in Delaware, the mumbling, bumbling, muttering fool in the White House, that guy Joe, is now completely ignoring what is happening, what the reality is for each and every person we're talking about. Not a peep out of Biden on any effort to save Americans he abandoned behind enemy lines. It is now day 24 of the worst hostage situation in American history.
We have 6 airplanes at Mazar Sharif Airport, 6 airplanes with American citizens on them as I speak, also with these interpreters, and the Taliban is holding them hostage.
We've been able to identify a relatively small number of Americans who we believe are seeking to depart from Mazar-e-Sharif with their families. The Taliban has not denied exit to anyone holding a valid document, but they have said that those without valid documents at this point can't leave.
We don't have a great deal of
understanding of every individual on these manifests.
They are not clearing the airplanes to depart. They've sat at the airport for the last couple of days. We know the reason why is because the Taliban wants something in exchange.
Americans held hostage, abandoned behind enemy lines. Day 24.
Day 24, the Biden administration, they still don't know how many Americans officially have been left behind, and there is zero plan to get them out. While these hostages were abandoned by Joe Biden, they have not been abandoned by their fellow Americans. 6 charter planes from great Americans around the country, including retired special ops officers on the ground, risking their lives, and other private organizations are now on the tarmac in an airport in northern Afghanistan. They're ready to take off carrying Americans and our allies to Qatar. According to various reports, these planes are now being blocked by the Taliban and others.